Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on Big Blue View Radio, part of your SB Nation family of podcasts. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts as well. All right, today we're going to talk about a couple of the new hires on the Giants coaching staff, defensive coordinator Shane Bowen, and new tight ends coach Tim Kelly, who's the former offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. Here to help me do that is Justin Melo of the Draft Network and SB Nation's Music City Miracles, which covers the Titans. Justin, thanks for hopping on.
Pleasure's all mine. Nice to see a couple of former coordinators there pop up in East Rutherford. So excited to go through it with you.
Yeah, so let's get right to that. Shane Bowen, 37 years old, 3 years of experience, I think, in Tennessee as the coordinator. If you can, just a quick synopsis, quick thought on what the Giants are getting here in Bowen.
Well, I think they're getting a pretty good defensive coordinator, and that's not always popular maybe in Tennessee. But I think if you look at the history, they typically were outstanding in the red zone, really good run defense for the majority of his time there. Certainly an extension of Mike Vrabel, right? So sometimes it's difficult to separate how much of that was Mike Vrabel's defense, how much of it was Shane Bowen's defense. But they were two guys that were together for a long time, dating back to, their days together with the Houston Texans. So they're getting a flexible defensive coordinator who would, prefer to play man coverage when he has the personnel to do so. Typically had a good weekly game plan when they were going up against good opponents. You look at when they would play the Buffalo Bills or Baltimore or the Kansas City Chiefs, for example, two of the better teams in the league who were two common opponents of the Titans in recent years. A lot of cover two, kind of force those quarterbacks to nickel and dime and try to protect against the big play. When they would play against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, a lot of press man coverage and single coverage to make him throw to the ball to the outside and sort of take away the middle of the field. And they wanted to see that Lamar could throw the football, the way that he can nowadays. But that game plan worked for them a lot. People will remember when they upset the Ravens as the number one seed a couple of years ago when Lamar Jackson won MVP. So I think you're getting a flexible defensive coordinator that's always shown up and had great game plans against big opponents. The Cincinnati Bengals are another team, Joe Burrow in that offense, only averaged 14 points per game in 3 games against Shane Bowen and his defense, and they never scored more than 20 points in any of those games. So I think you're getting a good, flexible defensive coordinator.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is the fact that Bowen worked for Mike Vrabel, and at least for a couple of those years, the Titans had Jim Schwartz on staff as a consultant. Coming to the Giants, where Brian Daboll is an offensive-minded head coach, Shane Bowen will be more on his own. This will be more, we know it's Shane Bowen's game plan. We know it's Shane Bowen's scheme. And you don't have to wonder, how much of that is the defensive-minded head coach. In your mind, at this point, after 3 years in Tennessee, is he ready for that sort of, I guess, what I would call solo responsibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I never saw that as, Mike Vrabel didn't call defensive plays, for example. Certainly he was the overseer of everything, if you will, but he wasn't the defensive play caller or things of that nature. So no, I don't think there's any concern whatsoever about Shane Bowen being able to do this thing, quote unquote, on his own.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that happened in New York, obviously, Brian Daboll and Wink Martindale, messy divorce with the Giants. And, those are two guys who are very much alpha type guys, very much, have their own beliefs in how to do things. Martindale, very experienced coordinator, been around for a long time. And I don't think he wanted to hear input from Brian Daboll. Shane Bowen, a little different place in his career, a lot younger. Brian Daboll, obviously offensive-minded, of course, but is that going to be an issue at all with Shane Bowen if Brian Daboll wants to sit down and ask questions and make suggestions or whatever?
I mean, he's a flexible, collaborative coordinator.
Hmm.
Certainly, I don't worry about that. I don't, the personality isn't quite as strong as Don Martindale. Certainly, I think you get more of a alpha male personality when it comes to the Wink. No, Bowen's going to be flexible and collaborative, and he's going to take advice certainly from Brian Dable and sort of let Dable make sure the defense is within his vision, even though he's an offensive minded guy. But no, I imagine the relationship between Dable and Bowen will probably be a lot better than it was between Dable and Wink.
Jimmy Morris, one of the who runs the Titans site for SB Nation, I had reached out to him for a comment on Bowen, and basically I'm kind of paraphrasing here, and he basically said the defense played the way it should have most of the time based on personnel and opponent. Is that pretty accurate in your mind?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
He said the defense played the way it should have, basically to the level it should have, based on personnel and opponent.
With the Titans?
Yes.
Certainly. I mean, I go back to when I want to say it was 2019 when the defense was poor. It was really poor, historically poor for stretches, um, for long stretches of that season. And everyone in Tennessee wanted Shane Bowen fired, the fan base. And Mike Vrabel made one of the most unpopular decisions at the time that he probably ever made. He did not fire him. He did not relieve him of his duties at all. And they told everyone this was a personnel problem. This is not a coaching problem. What did they do that offseason? They came back with like 7 or 8 different new starters on the defensive side of the ball. And they got a lot better in 2020, significantly better, even, you would say. So he was right. Certainly, I think personnel, opponent, they were flexible. As I said, cover 2 one week, single man coverage the next week. So I certainly think, and I say this about Shane Bowen all the time, he's not going to reinvent the wheel. If you're looking for that guy, he's not going to do that. But he's also not someone that's incompetent by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. He's not going to get in his own way. If the players are capable of executing, they've got talent on there, he's going to maximize that talent and they're going to have a good defense. So certainly he is, I would say, flexible based on how things go.
Justin, Shane Bowen is not the only former Titans coach that the Giants hired this week. They added Tim Kelly, former Titans offensive coordinator, as their tight ends coach. And the interesting thing about that for me is he's a former offensive coordinator. He had that role in Tennessee. I think he had that role. It might have been in Houston before that. I don't have that in front of me, but tight ends coach, the guy going back to being a positions coach, is sort of a step backwards. Does it say anything about the caliber of coach that Kelly is?
No, I think he was dealt an extremely tough hand this year, right? From a personnel perspective, they had the worst left tackle play in all of football, right? By far, right? Like certainly, I think they played 4 different left tackles this season, if not 5. You had Andre Dillard, you had Dylan Radins, you had Nicholas Petit-Frere, you had our 6th-round rookie Jalen Duncan. Receiver depth was an issue behind DeAndre Hopkins. Guys like Traylon Burks and Kyle Phillips have not taken the steps forward that people thought they were going to take. 2 different starting quarterbacks, a rookie coming in midseason. There were just so many personnel related difficulties that I think that Tim Kelly had to deal with this year. I'm of the opinion that he's a good offensive coordinator. I thought he did a good job calling plays, severely hamstrung, as I said. You go back, and I'm sure Giants fans will do this. You go back to the years that he spent with the Houston Texans, a lot of good seasons there, when they had a good offense, when Deshaun Watson was in his prime and they still had DeAndre Hopkins. So I think Tim Kelly's a good offensive coordinator, and it's a victory to get him into the organization as a position coach.
Nice. One of the things that I wanted to ask about, obviously, 2 Titans coaches added to the Giants staff. Obviously, Mike Vrabel coaches come from the Vrabel tree. Do you find it interesting that Brian Dable, who has Patriots connections, turned to the Vrabel tree? Obviously, Vrabel with Patriots background as well. To kind of fill out his staff here. Do you find that I don't find it surprising at all. I find it kind of interesting that, I mean, Dable doesn't have previous connections to these two guys, but they have similar sort of backgrounds and training to what he has.
I guess a little. You know, I've always been torn on calling Mike Vrabel, you know, from the Patriots tree. I understand he played, you know, he obviously played there for many years, had a lot of success, but you know, he learned under Urban Meyer, right? That was his first coaching job, and then certainly maybe an extension of the Patriots coaching tree when he joined, you know, Bill O'Brien, who also comes from that tree in Houston. But it might help that Dable and some of these guys have taken similar paths. But even Tim Kelly, again, you know, now working under Vrabel's not someone I would say comes from the Patriots coaching tree. Yes, they work together in Houston, Vrabel and him, but he's on the offensive side of the ball, Vrabel on the defensive side of the ball. It may have helped, again, with some of those initial conversations, but I don't think it was probably overly telling to the final outcome.
All in all, though, good coaches in your mind that the Giants have added to this staff.
In my opinion, yes. In my opinion, yes. I think, Tim Kelly, especially getting him as a position coach, is a major win. And I think Shane Bowen is a good quality defensive coordinator. Again, people take this as a negative when I say it, but there are a lot of bad defensive coordinators in football. Shane Bowen's probably a league average one. You know, I don't think you had a home run hire here, but I think you've hired someone that, you know, isn't going to get in his own way. And I think sometimes we don't realize how much of a compliment that is, right? I think he's going to have good game plans for the personnel that he has. And I'll say it again, and it happened this past year. If you've got bad players on defense, he's not going to, you know, Vic Fangio, Brandon Staley once upon a time mastermind this thing. You're probably not going to have a very good defense if you've got bad players on defense. But then again, I typically lean towards players over coaching, you know, in this league. And players are the one that got to go out there and execute. And if he's got good players, he's not going to get in his own way and prevent them from fielding a good defense.
All right, what I need to do here before I let you go is I need to ask you to switch from your Titans hat to your draft hat for a second. Interesting thing, we've been talking a lot at Big Blue View about Spencer Rattler lately. We talk a lot about the Giants quarterback situation. In my first 3-round mock draft on Sunday, I gave the Giants Spencer Rattler in the 3rd round. Our draft guy, Chris Flum, did a deep dive on Rattler this week. You know, it's an interesting situation for the Giants. Do they go quarterback if one of those guys falls to number 6? And if that doesn't happen, how do they approach quarterback this offseason? And I wanted to ask you specifically about Rattler because I saw that for Draft Network, you did a piece on Rattler this week and you connected Rattler to the Giants as one of the 3 places where you really saw Rattler as a fit. So just talk to me about Rattler, about why you think he's a fit for the Giants. And the other part of that is coming off a Senior Bowl where he was really good. If the Giants or any team wants Spencer Rattler, how early are they going to have to move to get him?
Well, I don't think the Giants are going to take one of those quarterbacks. Number one, I don't think one of them is going to be available in the top 6, right? I don't think you're getting Jaden Daniels or Drake May at number 6. You know, stranger things have happened, but I'm sort of operating under the thought process that both of those guys will be gone before they come on the board. Certainly, they'd have an interesting decision if one of them is available. I'd be torn on that. You know, the investment in Daniel Jones was so sizable. You're not moving on anytime soon, certainly not before this season arrives. So, but I look at a guy like Spencer Rattler, who had a great Senior Bowl. I do think you're looking in the mid-round. I don't think he gets into the 2nd round, probably a 3rd or 4th round pick. I think that's somewhere the Giants should go this offseason, right? Like maybe prepare yourself for the possibility that Daniel Jones is the guy. Is not the guy, I should say, and maybe take a gamble on a mid-round quarterback. I know it's a cliche, but you look at how San Francisco struck gold with a Brock Purdy when they were unsure about Jimmy Garoppolo, so to speak, right? And Trey Lance. I think the Giants got to take a similar thought process, right? It's let's take a chance on a mid-round guy and see if we strike gold in case the current one we have in place isn't the long-term answer. But with Spencer having the great Senior Bowl, it's going to prop him up the board a little. He's matured a lot as a quarterback. He's athletic. He's got some dual threat ability. He could thrive outside the pocket. Certainly salvaged his career going from Oklahoma to South Carolina, and the success that he's had there. But I think that's the route the Giants should take. Probably look at a mid-round quarterback.
All right, my thanks to Justin Melo for the time and the Titans and draft knowledge. Also wanted to touch base with you on a couple of things about the Giants. Looks like Brian Daboll has pretty much finished filling out his coaching staff, added Charlie Bullen as outside linebackers coach, Bullen formerly in that role with the Arizona Cardinals, and Zach Kerr, former Tennessee Titans assistant, as a defensive assistant. Also, interestingly, Giants announced promotions for a couple of their existing coaches. Mike Kafka got the title assistant head coach. Quarterbacks coach Shea Tierney got the offensive passing game coordinator title added, and defensive backs coach Jerome Henderson got the defensive passing game coordinator title added as well. Really, I'm not going to read a whole lot into any of those. Just a little bit extra for those guys, maybe a little bit of a raise. In Henderson's case, a way to maybe smooth some feelings over the fact that Henderson, who was a candidate for defensive coordinator, didn't get the job that went to Shane Bowen. Maybe in Kafka's case, a way to smooth over any difficulty that there might have actually been between him and Brian Daboll, and maybe a way to keep him off the coaching market, maybe through the 2024 season. Tierney's a guy who's an up and coming coach, who's a protege of Brian Daboll's, and adding a new title, maybe adding some responsibility, maybe can be looked at as a step forward for Tierney. But I'm not reading too much into any of those new titles. Anyway, Giants fans, before I wrap it up, just wanted to also mention that I did have an opportunity on Thursday to talk to Saquon Barkley. You can check out the audio of that in a post that I did at Big Blue View. You can also check that out anywhere you listen to podcasts across the Big Blue View radio network. All right, Giants fans, thank you as always for listening. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.